The COVID-19 pandemic was a disaster, bringing fear, uncertainty, and chaos. But amidst the pandemic, a shocking crime was committed. A woman caught in a deceitful scheme began with her seemingly ordinary life and relationship she cherished. But as the events unfolded, it became clear that her untimely death was the result of a sinister plot. This is a story that will leave you questioning the trust you put in the people around you, and the dangers that exist in your daily life. Was she a victim of the pandemic or something far more sinister? Let's delve into the life of Gretchen Anthony and unravel the mystery of her disappearance that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Gretchen Anthony was a 51-year-old single mother living in Florida who was originally from West Long Beach, New Jersey. Gretchen was a former teacher and had been a business manager for a fitness company. At the time of her disappearance, she was employed as a human resources manager. She loved tattoos, literature, and most of all, her daughter. She was a hard-working single mother who had built a life for herself and her daughter. She was a kind and compassionate person who always put others first. Gretchen seemingly had a perfect life, but there was one aspect of her life that wasn't just off, but quite troubling. In 2015, Gretchen met a guy named David. She met David after her divorce from her husband, Jeff. Gretchen and David met in an Orange Theory gym in Stuart, Florida. There, David was Gretchen's personal trainer, and soon their relationship developed into something more serious. David was a 44-year-old man living in Palm Beach County whose life was unraveling. He had recently been fired from his job after a string of disruptive behavior towards women. He had been evicted from his Jupiter townhome and was now living with his elderly mother. Gretchen and David started dating and made their relationship official. Everything was great for the two, and so they decided to get married. The first 2 years were the happiest, but soon after things started to take a deep turn. David had some mental issues. He was depressed, and according to his family, he was also bipolar. Instead of taking medicine for his problems, he immersed himself in the world of fitness. However, because he was not taking medication or seeking treatment, his mental health deteriorated over time. And with it came new complications in his relationship with Gretchen. The couple began to argue a lot, and their confrontations quickly turned violent, especially whenever David became verbally abusive. But that wasn't all. In 2018, David left his house and went to live in an unknown place because he believed the world was coming to an end. Although he eventually returned home, things only grew worse. Once at work, David burst into tears and sobbed uncontrollably after remembering that his idol Kobe Bryant had passed away tragically. He even gave a lengthy speech on the topic. Things at home were also not going well. Gretchen would text her friends, telling them that some nights she waited until David went to bed so she could go downstairs and get a knife to sleep with beneath her pillow. Over the course of their 5-year relationship, the couple split for 6 months and then reconciled. But in late 2019, Gretchen had had enough and filed for divorce from David. But before that, she had another surprise in store for her. Gretchen's relatives and friends received a text message from her a few days later in which she informed them that she had been hit by COVID. Her daughter was staying at her father's house that weekend, and Gretchen, according to her messages, was admitted to a coronavirus disease control and prevention treatment center. Gretchen's friends and family were concerned when they learned she had COVID, but they were reassured since she was being treated. Gretchen also told her boss through text messages that she had COVID and would need to remain in isolation for 2 weeks. She even mentioned that she could not maintain communication with anyone other than her family. Adding to this mystery, Jeff, Gretchen's ex-husband, also started receiving strange texts from her phone, providing information about her whereabouts. She was in some kind of facility and might have to be put into a medically induced coma. Jeff was alarmed because the messages just didn't match Gretchen's usual writing style. With each unanswered question, the suspense and uncertainty continued to build. Gretchen was slow to answer text messages and didn't call anybody, which worried her family, who decided to call the police after they didn't hear from her. The police began by locating Gretchen, who stated that she was being kept at the health center. They went to Jupiter Medical Center to ask for Gretchen, but they discovered unexpected news. She was never hospitalized there. While looking around the hospital, the police discovered Gretchen's Mini Cooper parked in the parking lot, where they also retrieved her purse. But Gretchen was nowhere to be seen. The detectives then checked the parking lot surveillance footage, where they discovered that the automobile indeed had drove in there, but someone else left it. It looked to be a towering figure, not at all like Gretchen. Furthermore, the CDC facility to which Gretchen was brought never even existed. Gretchen's house was searched further by the authorities, But when they arrived, they discovered everything except Gretchen. Several pieces of evidence were discovered that plainly showed that whatever had occurred was not good. The officers discovered a blue and white towel on the drying machine in the laundry room with an odd stain on it. The towel appeared to have been used recently. In addition, the door from the patio to the adjacent garage had a broken-off key in its lock. This was a worrying issue because it didn't indicate anything good. When the cops walked out onto the patio, they didn't discover anything unusual, although there was a strange odor of a cleaning substance. Not only that, but detectives discovered a soapy fluid pouring downwards from the garage door. The cops also discovered more cleaning products, pieces of glass, a shattered frame, and missing security cameras inside the residence. What was more alarming was the fact that Gretchen's estranged husband, David, was also missing. When the police arrived at David's parents' house, where he had been staying for the last few days, his mother told them that she had also received a text message from Gretchen that she had gotten COVID. When the officers questioned her about her son, she told them that he was heading to Costa Rica for work. While the police were still looking for Gretchen, they received news that Gretchen's phone was active and traveling west of Florida. This had to have been a good indication, but they also noticed that David's phone was pinging in the tower in the same general vicinity as Gretchen's phone. The cops then began following David since his phone was close to Gretchen's phone. The authorities learned that on his route to Costa Rica, David stopped at many pawn shops and sold jewelry to them. He had informed the stores that the jewelry belonged to a loved one who died as a result of the coronavirus. David was found on March 27, 2020 in the area of Pecos, Texas, and the next day in Las Cruces, New Mexico, where the authorities eventually apprehended him. They stopped David and checked his vehicle, discovering that his truck's bed was full of assorted bags. David's dog Kobe was also taken by the authorities. Now that David was in the hands of the authorities, they asked him a few questions concerning Gretchen's whereabouts. When questioned by the police, David stated that the last time he communicated with Gretchen was on Saturday, March 21st. During all of this, he also requested a meeting with the FBI because he wanted to tell them something about Gretchen, specifically about her work, and that she was in trouble. But that was clearly not the case because she had never made a complaint about it. The cops then asked David whether he was relocating anywhere, to which he answered that he was an electrician and an engineer who could work wherever. However, he was unaware that the police already knew of his plans to go to Costa Rica. When the cops searched David's car, they discovered some startling evidence. They discovered Gretchen's phone, and to further investigate, the police informed David that they would be inspecting his car, but he was released since they lacked sufficient proof against him. However, on March 31st, while walking his dog, David was detained because the cops uncovered something very horrifying. When the cops took David into custody, they told him that one of Gretchen's neighbors had come forward during the inquiry. She told the officers about the night when she heard a woman cry loudly, "No, no, it hurts." They even showed a picture of David's black Nissan truck in Gretchen's driveway during that time. David first denied ever being there. He attempted all he could to move the conversation towards Viking Utilities, where Gretchen worked, and continued claiming that she was having problems at work. However, the cops were not convinced. The cops even showed David the cameras they found in his truck after they were taken from Gretchen's house. But what he didn't realize was that the camera was part of a web-based system, and that no matter what happened to the device, the data remained safe and accessible on the internet cloud. What was discovered on the cameras was much more frightening. The cops found the entire footage of David murdering Gretchen, how he pulled her to the garage and committed the heinous deed, as well as how he cleaned the place. He was still in denial when they showed him the images. Despite the evidence, he continued to inform the police that Gretchen was alive. The police asked David to tell them about Gretchen's body for the sake of her daughter Eva, but he refused. Following that, the investigator played a heartfelt message from Eva, asking David to tell her about her mother. David refused to cooperate with the authorities until 9 months later on December 21st, 2020. The police discovered Gretchen's body after David was given a plea bargain. He showed the police where he buried his wife, which was not far from her home, and was buried behind a nearby Walmart. David was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 38 years in prison. Gretchen's autopsy indicated that she had been cruelly stabbed in the neck and torso. Thank you for watching True Crime Prime. Kindly subscribe to our channel and remember to like, share, and comment.